Okay, when it comes to the Hyundai Veloster, you can generally split people into three groups with these things. Group 1 are the fans and owners, and they get what's going on here, and that's great. But Group 2, they don't like these. They think this is like a pretend performance car. They just simply don't have the power or the pedigree to be taken seriously. But then you've got Group 3, and they don't know what the hell's going on here. Like, yeah, it looks funky, but like, what's with the weird doors? And is it a hatch or a coupe? And like, it looks like it should be fast, but apparently they aren't. So let's just find out if Group 1 is right or Group 2 is wrong. And either way, we're going to hopefully explain to Group 3 what the hell is going on here. Now, as I just alluded to, the Veloster, it does cop its fair share of hate out there. But you know what? In this world of so many beige mobiles, at least Hyundai have tried something different. And when I say different, like, not only is it like a hatchback and a coupe and a liftback all at once, if you can't decide between buying a multi-door hatch and a coupe, with this you can have both, because you've got coupe doors here, or one door there, and then over here, it's like a multi-door hatchback because you've got two doors. Excellent. Plus, with the likes of like other hot hatches and coupes, say the Golf GTI, Renault Megane RS, and even the Toyo Baru BR86Z twins, tend to prioritise their performance abilities. These, even in turbo form, they tend to take a bit more of a relaxed and fun approach at performance, and that seems to annoy some people. But if you have absolutely no interest in enthusiastic driving, well, the Veloster is available without a turbo. In fact, that's how they initially arrived. But a Veloster without a turbo, for me personally, sounds about as appealing as Margot Robbie or Ryan Gosling without a face. Like, you know, still very talented and all the other bits are very impressive, but they're kind of missing the moneymaker, the turbo, I mean. Now, the Veloster first appeared in early 2012, the turbo models rocked up later that same year, and updated Series 2 arrived in 2015, and even though the current second generation appeared in 2018, in this video we're just going to be focusing on the first generation cars, which, fun fact, is incredibly closely related to the Kia Proceed GT. We've made a full review video of that car, it's up there. Honestly, besides the aesthetics and the rear suspension setup, they're ostensibly the same thing. Now, across the first Veloster's lifetime, and ignoring the subtly enhanced aesthetics, extra ratio, a few steering and suspension improvements, and subtle aesthetic changes of the update, the Veloster remained pretty much unchanged between iterations. Even in terms of trim specs, as you can see, the range itself is very easy to understand. But you know what isn't easy to understand? Why some people out there pay way more than they need to when it comes to car finance. See that? What a seamless segue into an ad. If you hit that driver link down there, not only are you helping us put food on our tables, but you can also choose the best finance package for your car. The entire process can be done easily online. There are no hidden fees, and you can get pre-approval in just minutes. Plus, finance your car via that link, and you're going to get $150 worth of free fuel. But if you're thinking, God, just wish other things in life were free. Well, express shipping is free when you order some of the best wiper blades in the world via the WIPERTECH link down there. They're super easy to order online. They're delivered to your door. They're easy to fit. They fit perfectly, and they wipe like their little rubber lives depend on it. And you'll also get 15% off. Okay, now back to the Veloster, and let's talk looks for a moment. I'm going to be honest with you. When these first came out, I was very much a Group 2 person. This just did nothing for me. I kind of felt like Hyundai were just trying too hard. But you know what? This has grown on me, and not in that kind of itchy, moist rash kind of way either. And also, if you put one of these next to the current generation Veloster, sort of current generation Veloster, I think this one looks way more unique. Actually, you know what? I feel like the Kia Proceed GT that we reviewed recently, I feel like that's almost a gateway drug for the Veloster. Like, when you accept that this car is not trying to be a Golf GTI or a Renault Megane RS or even a Toyo Baru BR86Z, it's just trying to be a fun, funky thing of its own kind. It just makes it more appealing. Also, like, it's been a while since I've had a proper look at one of these, and then there's all these design highlights that I feel like I just ignored or just didn't see last time. But like, I love this. I love how the bottom of the headlight kind of works its way into this contour here. I like the front grille. Guys, who doesn't love some pumped guards? These are awesome. The whole asymmetric door thing, I think, super unique and cool. And then these like cutouts around the taillights, the twin pipes. Yeah, it's cool. But the big question with the exterior is, what is the TBTL factor? The TBTL factor is when you get out of the car, lock it and walk away and turn back to look. I give this, I love the colour. I love this satin grey colour. I'm going to go 7.8. Now inside, look, no matter which kind of generation of this first iteration of Veloster or which trim spec, they're all pretty much the same. You'd have to be an absolute Veloster anorak to be able to tell the differences. And for me, design-wise, it's pretty good. It's okay. I do kind of wish it was a little bit more unique, like the outside, but it's a nice enough place to be. Now look, materials-wise, you can tell that this car has been built on a budget, but in saying that, they've done a really good job at taking some pretty cheap materials and making them feel a little bit more expensive, like these textures up here, and all the touch points are good. As far as ergonomics go, look, driving position and adjustability, excellent. But then there are some weird things, like where the window switches are, they're behind these grab handles, so you kind of have to, you can't just move your hand across and hit a window switch. You've got to kind of lift up and over. And even where, I suppose, I've just noticed where the gear stick is, it feels like it's just back a little bit too far. I am an oddly shaped human butt, so maybe it's just me. Actually, another thing with the ergonomics, and maybe this is just me, being the turbo model, I was hoping that the seats would be a bit more supportive, like a bit more Recaro-y. These, yeah, I don't know, I feel like if you're really into it, you'd be sliding around the seat a little bit. Now, as far as wear and tear in this particular car goes, this is used on a daily basis, and it's not too bad. Some of the paint on these finishes is starting to kind of rub off and scratch off here and there. That's to be expected, I suppose. The leather on the seats, it's gone a little bit hard and a little bit on the crispy side. That could possibly be, I suppose, rejuvenated with some, like a really, really good detail, but yeah, just a little bit firm. The steering wheel is the same, like there's a little bit of texture left that needs a bit of work done. I feel like with a really, really good detail and maybe just repainting some of this stuff, it'd come up a treat. Now in practicality up front, you've got pretty decent sized glove box there, 2 cup holders here, spot perfectly sized for your phone under there. You've got a little tray here, more storage, little cubby hole here, decent sized door bins, and spot for sunglasses, specifically Ray-Bans. Very cool. That's it. Practicality. Now obviously one of the convenient parts of the Veloster is just getting in the back of a sporty looking car is pretty easy. And then once you're in the back seat, I'm exactly 3 centimeters taller than Kevin Costner in the back of this Hyundai Veloster. This is in my driving position. And it's interesting. So look, feet and legroom, not too bad considering the size of the car and what the car sort of is. But your head, because of this, you've got to, it's only comfortable if you have your head back and relaxed, but then because your head's sort of in the glass house of the car, it feels like, you know those like old school hair dryers that some of our more mature female viewers might use? The big round ones that go around your head? Cal put a photo up of what it looks like. It feels like you're wearing one of those. It's a little bit odd. But in saying that, because there's so much glass going on, like you've got the panoramic sunroof here and heaps of glass back here, it doesn't feel that claustrophobic for what it is. Like it's not exactly an SUV back here, but you know, for a little sporty coupe, yeah, it's good. Now, wear and tear in this particular car, obviously this is going to vary depending on which Veloster you look at and what kind of use it's getting, but yeah, not too bad back here. There's like, you know, again, the leather's not as soft as it could be, but there's no scratching on the seats or anything. It's okay. Then as far as practicality in the back seat goes, you've got 2 cup holders, a spot for your phone just there, a spot for life's filth just here, and Uno fishnet. Now in the boot, one area that it does beat a Renault Megane is the opening aperture. This thing's actually quite large, but then you've got an enormous load lip here, so anything heavy you've got to lift up and over to get it in. And then when it comes to the seats, look, you can fold them down, but then you're left with this bit of a lip here as well. I'm pretty sure they don't fold like up and down, if you know what I mean. For what this car is, it's a decent amount of practicality in the boot. So look, when these first came out, one of the big selling points was just how much stuff you got for what you spent. But now that they're even cheaper on the used market, yay for heaps of stuff for what you spend. Now, if you want to see what stuff you get, even in early and base spec models, get ready to hit the pause button now. But then look at a more recent and higher spec, get ready to hit the pause button because you're going to get all of this. Now, with the age of these, obviously they did miss out on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but fitting that stuff aftermarket should be pretty easy. But it comes with a warning. We have heard some horror stories when it comes to people buying cheap fitment systems or cheap entertainment systems from like Alibaba or eBay. So if you're going to fit Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, make sure it's a legit high quality product. Now look, obviously there's way more to all of the features and equipment and tech, like that sort of stuff. If you do need that information, go to ReDriven.com and check out our awesome and completely free ReDriven cheat sheet. It lists everything, it'll answer all of your questions. But now that a lot of this tech is, a decade or more old, how does it still work? First of all, the screen takes a little while to or the infotainment system takes a little while to kind of boot up. You're on the kind of the Hyundai screen for what feels forever. Actually pairing your phone, again, it takes some time, but I've found that since it's been paired, it hasn't dropped out at all, and it's been pretty easy to use. The screen itself, it's more of a push screen than a touch screen because it's, again, a little bit on the old side, but most of the functionality, it's not too bad. I don't think it's as bad as some people are complaining about online. Oh, and the sound of the stereo? A bit average, needs new speakers. Now, as far as the safety goes, look, obviously this is a bit old for any current active safety technology, but again, for what these cost, you do get a fair bit of safety kit. But to take you through exactly what safety features you can expect, because this car is sort of overtly designed, we're going to cut to another voiceover, but this time we're going to do the safety features in sort of like an artistic, wanky design terminology. The Veloster unveils a composition of unparalleled safety, transcending into a symphony of form and function. This vehicular opus is adorned with the quintessence of protective measures, transforming the mundane into the sublime and demanding our contemplation. 6 airbags, an ensemble of ethereal cushions cocoon the occupants in a celestial dance of safety. The ethereal partnership of ABS, electronic brake force distribution, and brake assist perform a harmonious convergence of technological marvels, ensuring the vehicle's movements remain a disciplined ballet. Electronic stability control, that omnipotent conductor of equilibrium, orchestrates a meticulous transaction with traction control, ensuring that the Veloster's trajectory is a refined performance in poise and composure. These intricate balletic nuances find their crescendo in the front seatbelts, which are adorned with pre-tensioners and load limiters, allowing each journey to become a graceful waltz of security and refinement, offering a symphonic ode to well-being, rendering safety not as an obligation, but inviting us to ponder upon the artistry of protection. Again, guys, for all of the details, ReDriven.com, check out the cheat sheet. So look, what's it like to drive? The thing is with cars like this, for a lot of people, it seems like if the car's not hell-bent on getting some kind of Nürburgring lap time, like what's the whole point of it? But you gotta remember, guys, sometimes the hottest of hot sauces is just too hot for most people. This thing, it provides just enough spice for pretty much everybody. It pulls fine. It's got I actually there's a little bit of turbo lag there, and I quite like that. I feel like it almost gives it like a bit of an old school turbo vibe. Like you've got to kind of wind on the boost, and it's just enjoyable. It's fun. Okay, look, it's not a crazy fast car, but it's got more than enough poke to overtake, to pull into traffic, and to have some fun on like a winding, deserted mountain road. Now, transmission-wise, this is a manual, and apparently that's a really good thing because there are quite a few complaints about the dual-clutch transmissions, both being a bit kind of clunky and confused around town or at low speeds. Once they're up to speed, they're fine, apparently, but I think you're better off with the manual, and I've got a funny feeling, reliability-wise, this is probably a better way to go too. And then when it comes to ride and handling, look, ride-wise, it's fine, it's firm. You can feel it's sort of degraded a little bit over the years, like it isn't quite as plush. The suspension on these have been tuned for Australian conditions, and that's a really good thing, but it is, it's a little bit on the firm side, maybe a little bit more firm than what you'd like. Handling wise, if you really push it hard, like any car like this, it is going to understeer, but again, it's not, it's not trying to be some crazy focused performance car, it's just fun. Engine note and sounds wise, engine note, it could do with, I don't know, maybe a little induction kit to give it a bit more growl. It does sort of sound like a warm hatch in a way if you really kind of rev it out. Rattles wise, I was expecting this thing to rattle like crazy. Some of the reports online are that these things can just be like a maraca stuck in a cutlery drawer. This one, none. There are no rattles, there are no weird squeaks and sounds. It sounds great. Look, overall, I feel like a Veloster Turbo is like the car equivalent of Beats headphones. If you talk to any audio expert, they hate Beats headphones. They just sell on their aesthetics, and it's all about the marketing, and audio-wise, they're not perfect. But you know what? For most people, Beats headphones are fine. They do the job. And this car's the same. Aesthetically, it's really cool and funky. It's enjoyable to drive. For most people, this is all the performance car they need. Who cares if it's not going to win any Nürburgring lap time, or it understeers on the limit, or the steering nuance isn't quite right? It doesn't matter. For most people, this is all the fun car they'll ever need. Now, when it comes to actually owning these and running these, financially, it's pretty good news. The non-turbo models, they kick off from around about $7,000 here in Australia. Turbo models, they start from around about $12,000. And even the really, really good mint ones, they kind of sit under 30 grand. Plus, as these aren't like a go-to performance car, plenty of these have lived really easy lives. Even when it comes to parts and labour, because a lot of the components are shared with a bunch of other Hyundai and Kia models, parts and labour should both be pretty affordable. But plenty of youths do buy them, and they sometimes think that they're better drivers than they actually are. So if you are buying one, look for any signs of accident damage or dodgy repair work. There's a bunch of other stuff you do need to check as well. Go and watch our Ultimate Used Car Buyer's Guide for us to take you through that whole process. Now, before we go and break everybody's hearts about what goes wrong with these things, a massive, massive thank you to all of the Hyundai Veloster owners groups. You know what, I feel like the last few weeks we've had some great owners groups. Skoda, Polo, GTI, and now Veloster. Fantastic owners groups. If you're buying one of these or you own one, join it, because the advice and just knowledge these people have, phenomenal. But guys, we've got to do this. What goes wrong with them? Let's start with the exterior. With the paint, some of the paint colours, there are reports that it's not exactly premium paint, so it's starting to fade, and even some owners are complaining that it just chips far too easily. Next up, the headlights. Not only can they yellow, but a lot of owners have complained that you're probably more efficient just holding a candle out in front of the car than what these can do. The windows on both sides can apparently fall off their tracks. The antenna, it can apparently just come off. Now, the funky front bumper is held on by some pretty cheap plastic clips, and they can break, and it causes the whole front bumper to sag like old men's balls. Now, this is a super common one. The boot latch can completely fail. Unfortunately, to fix it generally requires an entire new mechanism to be fitted. Also, the rear view cameras, they can get really fuzzy and glitch out and really only work when they're in the right mood. Now, there was an international recall for this, but the sunroofs can apparently explode, not like in a James Bond kind of way, but just kind of shatter and fall apart. Also, with the sunroof, there are plenty of reports that the mechanisms themselves can play up and just completely glitch out. Also, and this isn't technically exclusive to the Veloster, but it's critical that the drainage channels are cleared out, because otherwise water can drain into the interior. And this interior, like many car interiors, it doesn't appreciate being filled with copious amounts of water. So therefore, just make sure all of the carpets and the footwells are dry and show no signs of water damage. Even the leather on the seats, they can get kind of like harsh and crispy if they've been exposed to water too much. Now, the speakers, especially in the doors, they can blow out really easily, so they will probably need replacing, unless you like the sounds of crackling over your music or podcasts. Now, the early touch screens, they've got heaps of reports of just glitching out and completely failing, so maybe replace the screen when you replace the speakers. Now, the steering wheel's couplers, they can go bad, and that causes any of the buttons just to stop working completely. And plenty of owners have also reported like a clicking feel or a clicking kind of sensation when turning. Now, what that might be is a small rubber bushing that is deep inside the steering column. The part itself is actually quite cheap, but getting to it can be an absolute nightmare, and you might be paying some pretty hefty labour fees to replace it. Now, this next one shouldn't affect Velosters that have climate control, but if it just has normal air conditioning, apparently the air conditioning control knob can actually heat up and melt some of the functionality. Now, it seems that like position 4 or max is the problem. Like there's a resistor in there and it fails and it just starts blowing out everything else. So either don't use position 4 or max, or just get the whole thing repaired. Actually, you know what? The air conditioning system, both with climate control and the whole HVAC system, there are a bunch of different complaints surrounding it. Everything from just like annoying little things to some pretty catastrophic failures. Now, speaking of catastrophic failures, mechanically, what can go wrong with the Veloster? Look, I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic, but Jim is.
There are a lot of examples in the Kia and Hyundai group, the 1.8, the 2 litre and the 2.4 litre engines from the Theta group, catastrophically grenading themselves. Poor design and manufacturing defects are usually to blame, but thankfully in the Veloster Turbo, the 1.6 litre engine is from the Gamma family, which is somewhat more reliable, a little bit better. The early versions of these things are still very much prone to bottom end failure, big end bearing and conrod issues. There are a bunch of recalls that did address that, so absolutely make sure that they're all up to date. There are also plenty of reports of premature timing chain failure. Now you'll know if that's on the way out because cold startup, you'll just hear it rattling. It'll stop after a few seconds, but if you start to hear that rattle, yeah, it's definitely on its way out. So the higher mileage ones of these, if they ever get to high mileage, they can get a lot of clogging in the inlet. The inlet ports can choke up with carbon deposits and get a lot of coke on the valves. That can all be cleaned off chemically or with a walnut blast, and you'll know you'll need it if you're using a lot of fuel or if you've got a rough idle. It's not too complicated and not greatly expensive either. Oil leaks are pretty common in these. Around about 100,000 Ks, the valve cover starts leaking. Pretty quick and cheap fix. Also prone to rear main oil seals. Now that means the gearbox has got to come out to fix that, which is not cheap. If you're having a lot of oil leaking issues on these, have a good look at the breather system and specifically the PCV valve. If that's not working properly, they do tend to leak far worse. Given that these engines are prone to excessive oil consumption, it is imperative that these things are serviced at least every 10,000 Ks. And if you're buying one, just make sure it has an absolutely flawless and well-documented service history. The manual transmissions and the autos in these are okay, but the DCTs, they are a little bit problematic. Issues with the clutch actuators and the selectors can be very problematic and very expensive to fix, so maybe just get the manual. It's probably a way safer option. So if you simply must have one, that's fine, but just make sure you get a absolutely standard one that hasn't been modified or molested in any way, and make sure it's got an absolutely faultless service history.
Now guys, we need to make this really clear. Obviously not every Veloster suffers from these issues. Models like this exact example have never had an issue and most likely never ever will. But the key with reliability from these is just fastidious maintenance. And then that brings us to the big question, should you buy one of these? I tell you what, you certainly shouldn't buy the wrong one. Far too many Velosters on the used market have cut corners financially, missing services, lack of maintenance history, and have been poorly modified and just driven and owned with a total lack of care and mechanical sympathy. And if you find a Veloster that is showing any signs of these things, guys, do not buy it. It might seem like a cheap bargain right now, but it will cost you big time in the long run. But if you can find a mint condition example with any of the engine issues sorted, preferably with a manual transmission with a perfect service history that has clearly been loved and cared for, and its pre-purchase inspection checks out, yeah, look, it's a cautious, yes, buy it. Look, it can be a great fun and funky little car, but just be careful. Look, it's certainly not a car for everybody, but if you get this, embrace it, because it's so great to see people owning and driving a unique car like the Veloster, because it's great to see not another beige-mobile. Which obviously brings us to the question, would you buy one of these, or would you get the Kia Proceed GT, or would you go with something more traditional like a Golf GTI or a Renault Megane RS, something like that? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. There are no hidden fees. The entire thing is easy undone online. Good. Okay, so there are a lot of examples of this again, Kia 1.8. Okay. Okay, and should you buy one of these? Tell you what, you shouldn't. Alright, here we go. And then, come on brain, if we work as a team, we can do this. We can totally do this.